The hardest lies are never the ones you tell other people. They're the ones you rehearse until they become your morning routine. Every weekday began the same way for Ethan Carter. At precisely 6:15 a.m., the alarm on his nightstand chimed with mechanical precision. He reached over, silenced it before the second tone, and lay motionless for a few seconds, staring at the pale ceiling of his downtown Chicago apartment. The city outside was already stirring, but inside, everything remained meticulously quiet, as if silence itself were another habit he had learned to maintain. His apartment reflected the same careful order. Crisp white walls, dark oak furniture, a single bookshelf filled with marketing journals, biographies, and neatly arranged novels. No framed vacation photos. No personal keepsakes scattered across the room. Nothing that invited questions. Ethan preferred it that way. Questions had a dangerous way of leading to answers. After a quick shower, he selected a navy-tailored suit, polished leather shoes, and a silver watch that had belonged to his late father. Looking into the bathroom mirror, he practiced the smile that had carried him through 6 years at Whitmore and Kane Consulting. Friendly, relaxed, confident, convincing. By the time he entered the company's gleaming glass headquarters, he had already become someone else. Morning, Ethan, called Melissa from Human Resources as she balanced 2 coffee cups. Morning, still taking your mystery girlfriend out this weekend? He chuckled at exactly the right moment. If our schedules line up. Melissa laughed, satisfied, and continued toward the elevators. Another conversation completed. Another performance delivered flawlessly. The office occupied 30 floors overlooking the Chicago River. Conversations drifted between polished workstations while giant digital displays flashed campaign metrics and quarterly projections. Ethan moved comfortably through the organized chaos, exchanging greetings, discussing deadlines, reviewing presentations. To everyone around him, he was dependable, ambitious, and remarkably private. Nobody questioned why no one had ever actually met the woman he occasionally referenced in casual conversation. People accepted simple stories when they fit familiar expectations. That acceptance had become his greatest shield. Years earlier, he had watched another talented executive quietly disappear after rumors spread about his sexuality. Officially, the resignation had been voluntary. Unofficially, everyone understood the message. Ethan never forgot how quickly admiration could transform into whispered speculation. So he learned. He edited photographs before posting them, invented harmless weekend dates, memorized fictional anecdotes. He didn't think of them as lies anymore. They were survival skills. Near noon, an email appeared across every employee's monitor. Please welcome our new senior project manager, Noah Bennett. Company-wide introduction at 2 p.m. The conference room buzzed with polite anticipation that afternoon. Executives gathered near the front while employees filled every remaining chair. Ethan slipped into the last available seat just as the director stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced warmly, I'd like you all to meet Noah Bennett. A tall man in a charcoal suit walked into the room with effortless composure. Clean-cut blonde hair, calm blue eyes, an easy smile that seemed practiced enough to reassure strangers without revealing anything real. For one brief moment, Noah's gaze met Ethan's across the crowded room. Neither of them smiled. Yet somehow, Ethan had the unsettling feeling that the man standing at the front of the room recognized something invisible that everyone else had missed. People who spend years pretending eventually develop an instinct for recognizing another actor. Ethan tried to dismiss the uneasy feeling that followed him after the company introduction. It was irrational to believe a stranger could see through years of carefully constructed routines with nothing more than a passing glance. Yet Noah Bennett's composed expression lingered in his thoughts long after everyone returned to work. The following morning, Whitmore and Kane settled back into its familiar rhythm. Keyboards clicked across the open office. Phones vibrated with incoming client requests. The aroma of fresh espresso drifted from the executive lounge. Deadlines never paused simply because someone new had arrived. Ethan welcomed the distraction. At 9:30, his department director appeared beside his desk. Ethan, conference room 6. You're partnering with Noah on the Mercer campaign. He looked up, forcing an effortless nod. Of course. The meeting room overlooked the river, where sunlight shimmered across slow-moving water. Ethan arrived first, arranging project files in precise stacks. A minute later, the door opened. Noah stepped inside carrying only a tablet and a notebook. Mind if I sit here? He asked. Go ahead. Their greeting remained perfectly professional. No awkwardness. No unnecessary warmth. Just two colleagues assigned to the same project. For nearly an hour, they discussed marketing strategies, budget forecasts, and presentation schedules. Noah listened more than he spoke, occasionally offering observations that were concise, yet unexpectedly insightful. Ethan found himself appreciating the efficiency despite his determination to remain emotionally distant. You've organized everything exceptionally well, Noah remarked while reviewing the timeline. I prefer avoiding surprises. A faint smile touched Noah's lips. So do I. The reply carried an odd weight, though nothing about the words themselves seemed unusual. When the meeting concluded, they walked toward the elevators together. Several co-workers waited nearby. One of the account managers grinned at Noah. So, Bennett married? No. Girlfriend back home? There was the briefest hesitation. Barely noticeable. Less than a heartbeat. Nothing serious, Noah answered smoothly. The group laughed before shifting to another conversation. Only Ethan noticed how carefully those 3 words had been selected. Nothing serious. Not no. Not yes. Simply an answer that ended further questions. The elevator door slid open. Inside the mirrored cabin, silence settled between them while co-workers continued discussing weekend plans. One employee joked about setting Noah up with his cousin. Another insisted Chicago had the best dating scene in the country. Noah smiled politely throughout the exchange, offering agreeable responses without revealing anything meaningful. Ethan recognized every technique. Redirect. Deflect. Conclude. It was the same invisible script he had perfected years ago. When they reached the 23rd floor, everyone except Ethan and Noah stepped out. The doors closed once more. For the first time, they stood alone. Neither spoke immediately. The soft hum of the elevator filled the space. Finally, Noah glanced toward the mirrored wall rather than directly at Ethan. You answer questions very carefully. Ethan's pulse slowed instead of racing. So do you. Another pause. This one longer. More deliberate. Noah gave the smallest nod, almost imperceptible. I suppose some workplaces reward honesty more than others. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. Without another word, Noah walked into the hallway. Ethan remained inside for a second longer, watching the closing doors separate them again. He couldn't explain why a conversation lasting less than 30 seconds unsettled him more than 6 years of pretending ever had. For the first time since joining the company, he wondered whether he was no longer the only person hiding behind a perfectly rehearsed life. Trust is rarely born from grand confessions. More often, it begins with 2 people quietly choosing not to expose each other's secrets. The Mercer campaign quickly became the company's highest priority. An international client expected a complete branding proposal within 3 weeks, leaving little room for mistakes. Every department contributed long hours, endless revisions, and strategy sessions that stretched well beyond sunset. Ethan and Noah found themselves working side by side almost every day. Their partnership was surprisingly effortless. Noah never interrupted when Ethan concentrated on financial projections. Ethan never questioned Noah's creative instincts during client presentations. Each seemed to recognize the other's strengths without competing for attention, a rare balance inside a workplace where ambition usually overshadowed cooperation. Late Tuesday evening, the office had nearly emptied. Rows of monitors glowed beneath dimmed ceiling lights while the city skyline sparkled beyond the windows. Ethan rubbed his tired eyes before reaching for another report. You've been staring at those numbers for 4 hours, Noah said from across the conference table. They won't organize themselves. They also won't improve if you're exhausted. Without another word, Noah disappeared into the hallway. A few minutes later, he returned carrying 2 paper cups. Black coffee, he said, setting one beside Ethan. No sugar. Ethan looked up, genuinely surprised. I've never told you how I drink it. You didn't have to. Noah shrugged lightly. I noticed. The answer settled somewhere deeper than Ethan expected. For years, people had noticed the version of him he deliberately presented to the world. They admired the polished employee, the dependable colleague, the ambitious professional. Very few had ever paid attention to the person underneath. As the evening continued, conversation drifted naturally beyond campaign schedules. Favorite authors, old movies, travel destinations neither had found time to visit. Curiously, both avoided discussing relationships. Neither forced the subject. Neither seemed disappointed by its absence. The following afternoon, the marketing team gathered in the executive lounge to celebrate landing another client. Laughter echoed between conversations as employees sampled catered desserts and exchanged harmless gossip. Melissa leaned against the counter beside Noah. "So, have you survived your first week?" "So far. Good. We should all get drinks Friday. Everyone's bringing someone." She glanced toward Ethan. "You too. Bring your girlfriend this time. We still think she's imaginary." Several co-workers laughed. Ethan answered with the familiar smile he had perfected years ago. "I'll see what I can do." Across the room, Noah quietly lifted his coffee instead of joining the joke. Their eyes met for only an instant. No amusement, no pity, only understanding. Later that evening, they left the building together beneath a sky painted with fading shades of orange and blue. The sidewalks buzzed with commuters hurrying toward trains and buses. Halfway to the parking garage, Ethan noticed Noah slowing his pace. "Can I ask you something?" Noah said. "You just did." A quiet laugh escaped him. "When everyone jokes about your personal life, does it ever get easier?" Ethan stared ahead, watching traffic roll through the intersection. No. The single word hung between them. No explanations. No elaborate stories. Just honesty. For the first time, neither of them was pretending. As they reached the garage entrance, a black luxury sedan pulled alongside the curb. The passenger window lowered. A sharply dressed woman leaned out with an unmistakably familiar smile. "There you are, Noah," she called warmly. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" Ethan stopped walking. Every instinct told him something about the scene was completely wrong. A convincing performance only works until someone else begins reading the script instead of watching the stage. Ethan stood frozen on the sidewalk as the black sedan idled beside the curb. The woman behind the lowered passenger window wore an elegant cream-colored coat and an expression that radiated effortless familiarity. "There you are, Noah," she repeated with a warm smile. "We're going to be late." Noah glanced toward Ethan before turning back to the car. "I'll be right there." The woman noticed Ethan standing nearby. "You must be from the office." Ethan offered a polite nod. "Ethan Carter." She extended a hand through the window. "Claire Hastings." Her confidence was natural, almost disarming. "It's nice to finally meet one of Noah's co-workers." He hasn't stopped talking about how welcoming everyone has been. Noah's jaw tightened so subtly that almost no one would have noticed. Almost. Ethan did. After a few courteous words, Noah climbed into the passenger seat. The sedan disappeared into evening traffic, leaving Ethan alone beneath the glowing streetlights. Something about the encounter refused to settle comfortably in his mind. Not because Noah had a woman waiting for him, because every movement had felt rehearsed. The smile, the introduction, even the affectionate sweetheart. It resembled the same polished performance Ethan delivered every single day. The following morning, whispers spread through the office before 9 o'clock. "So that's Noah's fiancée. I saw them downtown last night. They make a beautiful couple." Someone had already discovered Claire's social media profile. Photos quickly circulated during coffee breaks. Charity galas, holiday parties, family gatherings. Always smiling, always perfectly composed. Ethan glanced at the images only once before returning his attention to his laptop. He should have felt relieved. Perhaps he had imagined everything. Perhaps Noah really was exactly who everyone believed him to be. Yet an uncomfortable doubt remained. Around lunchtime, Noah appeared beside his desk. "Do you have 5 minutes?" They stepped into a quiet meeting room overlooking the river. Neither spoke immediately. Finally, Noah leaned against the window. "I owe you an explanation." Ethan folded his arms. "You don't owe me anything." "No." A faint, almost weary smile crossed Noah's face. "But I'd rather you hear it from me than from office gossip." He looked out across the skyline before continuing. "Claire isn't my fiancée." Ethan remained silent. "She's my oldest friend." Another pause. "We've known each other since college. So why pretend?" Noah exhaled slowly. "Because pretending is easier." Those 4 words landed with startling familiarity. "My parents adore her," Noah continued quietly. "Her family thinks we'll eventually get married. Corporate events become simpler when people assume we're together." "And Claire agrees to this?" She suggested it. Ethan searched Noah's face. There was no pride, no embarrassment, Only exhaustion. I've spent years borrowing a future that was never mine, Noah admitted. Eventually, people stopped asking questions. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Outside the glass wall, employees crossed the hallway carrying laptops and coffee cups, completely unaware that two carefully guarded lives had shifted inside the conference room. Then Noah looked directly at Ethan. I recognized it the first day. What? The way you answer personal questions. Ethan felt his carefully built composure begin to crack. You've practiced those answers too many times. The room fell silent again. Not awkward. Not hostile. Simply honest. For the first time in years, Ethan realized someone wasn't trying to uncover his secret. Someone had already found it. And somehow, instead of feeling threatened, he felt understood. Sometimes freedom doesn't begin with saying I love you. It begins with finally saying, this is who I am. The confession lingered between Ethan and Noah long after they left the conference room. Neither had spoken the words that mattered most, yet everything essential had already been understood. There was comfort in that realization, fragile as glass, but undeniably real. The Mercer campaign demanded even longer hours as the client presentation approached. Revisions multiplied overnight. Creative concepts evolved with every executive meeting. Entire afternoons disappeared inside brainstorming sessions, leaving little opportunity to think about anything beyond work. Still, something had changed. Without discussing it, Ethan and Noah began reserving the last hour of each evening for themselves. Once everyone else drifted toward elevators and parking garages, they remained in the conference room overlooking the river, laptops open, music playing softly from Noah's phone. The conversations gradually abandoned safe territory. What made you choose marketing? Noah asked one night while reviewing presentation slides. Ethan leaned back in his chair. I liked understanding people. And now, I spend most of my time trying to keep people from understanding me. Noah lowered his eyes with a quiet smile that carried no judgment. I know that feeling. Silence settled comfortably around them. It no longer demanded explanations. A week later, the client approved the final proposal. The office erupted into applause. Champagne appeared. Managers congratulated every department involved. Their director insisted the entire project team attend a celebration at an upscale rooftop lounge downtown. Refusing wasn't an option. That evening, Chicago shimmered beneath thousands of city lights as employees filled the terrace with laughter and raised glasses. Conversations flowed effortlessly beneath strings of warm lanterns. Ethan accepted sparkling water instead of champagne. He preferred staying alert. Across the terrace, Noah stood beside Claire, who had joined the gathering at the invitation of one of the executives. She played her familiar role flawlessly, resting a hand lightly against Noah's arm whenever someone approached. Watching them, Ethan felt something unfamiliar tighten inside his chest. Not suspicion, disappointment. He reminded himself he had no claim on Noah's life. Yet the thought offered little comfort. As the evening stretched on, Claire quietly approached Ethan while Noah spoke with senior management. Can we talk? She asked. They stepped away from the crowd toward the edge of the rooftop. The skyline reflected across the river below. Claire folded her arms against the cool breeze. You care about him. It wasn't a question. Ethan remained still. I don't know what you're talking about. She smiled gently. You're almost as convincing as Noah. His expression shifted before he could stop it. Claire noticed. I've protected his secret for years, she continued softly. Not because anyone asked me to. Because he's my family. Ethan looked toward Noah across the terrace. He deserves someone who lets him stop pretending. And you think that could be me? I think, Claire replied. You're already the only person who sees him after the performance ends. Before Ethan could answer, thunder rolled across the city. Guests hurried inside as rain began falling in heavy sheets against the rooftop windows. Within minutes, only Ethan and Noah remained outside beneath the covered balcony. The storm swallowed every sound except the steady rhythm of rain. Noah looked at him, his usual composure finally gone. I don't want to lie to you anymore. Ethan's heartbeat echoed louder than the thunder. Then Noah took one slow step closer. I'm gay. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan heard someone else speak the truth he had spent years burying inside himself. The first truth doesn't change your life. It simply makes it impossible to keep living the old one. The rain continued to fall in shimmering curtains beyond the balcony. blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and white. Ethan searched Noah's face, expecting uncertainty, regret, or fear. Instead, he found something far more unfamiliar: relief. It softened the tension around Noah's eyes, as though a weight he had carried for years had finally slipped from his shoulders. Ethan drew a slow breath. "So am I." The words left his mouth almost quietly, yet they echoed louder than any applause he had ever received inside the office. He had imagined saying them countless times over the years, to his family, to colleagues, perhaps one day to someone he loved. Reality felt nothing like those rehearsals. There were no dramatic reactions, no speeches, only two men standing beneath the shelter of a rooftop while a summer storm hid them from the rest of the world. Noah laughed softly. "I thought you might be. You were that obvious?" "No." A smile reached Noah's eyes. "Only to someone living the same life." For several seconds, they simply watched the rain, allowing silence to become something comforting rather than dangerous. Neither reached for the other's hand. Neither rushed the moment. Some truths deserved space before they became something larger. Over the following days, their friendship settled into unfamiliar territory. Nothing changed where anyone else could notice. Meetings remained professional. Emails stayed formal. They still entered conference rooms separately and left conversations with the same practiced composure. Only the smallest details shifted. A cup of black coffee already waiting on Ethan's desk before morning meetings. Noah remembering exactly how Ethan organized presentation notes. Text messages after difficult client calls. "You handled that well. Don't skip dinner tonight. Get home safely." Tiny gestures invisible to everyone except the person receiving them. One Friday evening, they left the office later than usual. Instead of heading toward the parking garage, Noah nodded toward the river walk. "Walk with me." Chicago glowed beneath the fading sunset. Street musicians filled the air with gentle melodies while boats drifted across the water below illuminated bridges. For once, neither of them worried about who might recognize them. "I forgot this city could feel peaceful," Ethan admitted. "I forgot I could." They wandered without destination, discussing childhood memories, embarrassing college stories, favorite holiday traditions, and dreams neither had spoken aloud in years. Conversation came effortlessly, no longer interrupted by invisible filters. Eventually, they stopped outside a quiet bookstore preparing to close for the night. Noah studied Ethan for a long moment. "Can I ask something selfish?" Ethan nodded. "Do you ever wonder what life would have looked like if we hadn't spent so many years pretending?" The question lingered between them. "Every day," Ethan answered honestly. Noah stepped closer, leaving only inches between them. "I don't want to lose what we've found." "You won't." "You can't promise that." "No." Ethan smiled gently. "But I can promise I'm tired of facing everything alone." Their eyes met beneath the warm glow spilling from the bookstore windows. Without thinking, Ethan reached forward. His fingers brushed lightly against Noah's hand. No one else noticed. No one else needed to. Yet across the street, hidden behind the windshield of a parked car, someone quietly lifted a phone and captured the moment with a single photograph before driving away into the evening. The most dangerous secrets aren't the ones you confess. They're the ones someone else decides to reveal. Monday arrived with an unfamiliar heaviness. Ethan sensed it the moment he stepped into Whitmore and Kane. Conversations stopped a fraction too quickly whenever he walked past. Coworkers who usually greeted him with easy smiles suddenly seemed distracted by their screens or coffee cups. Nothing obvious had changed, yet the atmosphere felt strangely distorted, as though an invisible current had shifted overnight. He dismissed the feeling. Deadlines had a way of making everyone tense. By mid-morning, however, Melissa approached his desk with unusual hesitation. "Have you checked the company group chat today?" Ethan frowned. "I've been in meetings." "You probably should." She walked away before he could ask another question. A cold sensation settled in his chest as he unlocked his phone. Near the top of the internal messaging thread was a blurred photograph. Two men standing beneath the lights of the Chicago Riverwalk, one reaching toward the other's hand. The image wasn't explicit. Their faces weren't perfectly clear, but anyone who knew them would recognize exactly who they were. Below the picture, speculation multiplied by the minute. "Is that Ethan? Looks like Noah. I thought Noah was engaged. Maybe it's just the camera angle. Then why are they holding hands?" Ethan closed the application without reading another message. Across the office, Noah had already seen it. Their eyes met through rows of workstations. Neither moved. Neither smiled. There was nothing left to pretend they didn't understand. An hour later, both received identical calendar invitations. Meeting with Human Resources, 1:30 p.m. The conference room felt unusually small. The HR director offered polite greetings before folding her hands on the table. "I'll be direct." She slid a printed copy of the photograph across the desk. "This image is circulating among employees." Silence. "We're not investigating anyone's personal life," she continued carefully. "However, workplace gossip has begun affecting team dynamics. Several clients have already heard rumors." Ethan spoke first. "What exactly are you asking?" "We're asking whether there's a relationship that could create a conflict of interest." Noah answered calmly. "No." The response was technically true. No official relationship existed. Not yet. The meeting ended without disciplinary action, but reassurance never came. The uncertainty hanging over every hallway conversation felt worse than any formal accusation. That evening, Ethan found Noah standing alone beside the office windows overlooking the river. "They're watching us now," Ethan said quietly. "I know. I spent years making sure this could never happen." "So did I." Noah turned toward him. "I'm sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did you." Yet both understood that innocence rarely protected people from judgment. As the week unfolded, invitations to lunch disappeared. Casual conversations became shorter. Every shared meeting attracted lingering glances. The photograph had transformed ordinary moments into evidence people believed they could interpret. On Friday afternoon, Ethan received an unexpected call from his mother. Her voice sounded unusually careful. "Ethan, someone from church sent me a picture." His heartbeat slowed. Not from calm, from dread. "I wanted to hear the truth from you." For years he had prepared himself for this conversation. Now every rehearsed sentence vanished. Before he could answer, another notification appeared on his computer. Mandatory executive meeting. Attendance required. He looked through the glass wall toward Noah. At the exact same moment, Noah's screen displayed the identical message. Both men stood. Neither knew whether they were walking into an ordinary meeting, or the moment their carefully constructed lives would finally collapse. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the moment fear finally loses the right to decide who you become. The executive conference room overlooked the Chicago skyline, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting a city that seemed unaware of the quiet storm unfolding inside. Every department head had taken a seat before Ethan and Noah entered together, though they instinctively left a respectful distance between them. The managing partner folded his hands across the polished table. "Thank you for coming." His voice remained measured, professional. "We're aware of the rumors circulating throughout the company." No one interrupted. "We're not interested in speculation. We're interested in facts." Silence settled over the room. The managing partner continued. "Are either of you violating company policy?" Ethan exchanged a brief glance with Noah. Every instinct urged him to choose the familiar path. Deflect. Redirect. Survive. It had worked for years. It would probably work again. But survival no longer felt like living. Ethan slowly rose from his chair. His heartbeat echoed in his ears. "I'd like to answer." Every face turned toward him. "I'm not violating company policy." He paused, drawing one steady breath. "But I have been hiding an important part of my life because I believed it would affect the way people saw my work." The room remained completely still. "I'm gay." No elaborate explanation followed. No apology. No excuses. Just the truth. The words seemed to dissolve years of invisible weight in a single moment. Across the table, Noah stood as well. "So am I." His voice never wavered. "I've spent most of my adult life trying to become someone everyone else would find easier to accept." He looked toward the executives. "I'm done doing that." The managing partner remained silent for several seconds before speaking. "Thank you for your honesty." He glanced around the room. "Our employment policies are based on performance, professionalism, and conduct." He slid the printed photograph aside. "Not assumptions about someone's private life." Several executives nodded in quiet agreement. One finally spoke. "The gossip ends today." Relief didn't arrive immediately. Neither did celebration. Years of fear could not disappear in a single conversation. Yet something fundamental had shifted. By the following Monday, the office atmosphere felt noticeably different. The whispers had faded. Employees focused once again on campaign deadlines instead of hallway speculation. Melissa stopped by Ethan's desk carrying 2 coffees. "For what it's worth," she said gently, "I'm sorry you ever felt like you had to hide." Ethan accepted the cup with genuine gratitude. "Thank you." Later that afternoon, Noah found him beside the conference room windows. So, they both laughed quietly, the sound lighter than either expected. "I kept imagining the worst possible ending," Noah admitted. "I know. What changed?" Ethan watched sunlight dance across the river below. "I realized I was more afraid of spending another decade pretending than I was of telling the truth." Noah smiled. "I think Claire predicted you'd say something like that." They walked toward the elevators together. Not secretly, not cautiously, simply together. As the doors opened onto the lobby, Ethan noticed several coworkers chatting nearby. No one stared. No one whispered. The ordinary rhythm of the office had finally returned. Outside, warm afternoon light washed over the city. Noah reached for Ethan's hand. This time, Ethan didn't hesitate. Their fingers intertwined naturally as they stepped onto the sidewalk, no longer searching every passing face for signs of judgment. For the first time since either of them had begun building carefully rehearsed lives, they weren't walking away from the truth. They were walking toward a future that finally belonged to them. The happiest endings are not the ones where everything becomes perfect. They're the ones where you finally stop pretending perfection was ever required. 1 year later, Chicago welcomed spring with streets lined by blooming trees and sunlight reflecting across the river that had witnessed so many quiet turning points. The city itself looked unchanged, yet Ethan Carter often smiled at how different it felt when he no longer carried fear everywhere he went. Life had unfolded in ways he never could have predicted. After the events that transformed the office, Whitmore and Kane introduced stronger workplace inclusion initiatives, not because of public pressure, but because leadership realized talented people should never believe authenticity threatened their careers. Ethan remained with the company, eventually accepting a promotion he once thought impossible. Colleagues no longer knew him as the quiet employee with mysterious weekend plans. They simply knew him as Ethan. That was enough. Noah chose a different path. Several months earlier, he had accepted an opportunity to lead creative strategy for a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting young professionals entering competitive industries. The position paid less than corporate consulting, yet every evening he returned home carrying something far more valuable than another successful presentation: peace. Despite working at different companies, neither complained about the change. Distance between offices never translated into distance between hearts. On Saturday mornings, they wandered through neighborhood farmers markets searching for fresh bread and coffee beans neither truly needed. Sunday afternoons belonged to bookstores where conversations drifted from novels to travel plans and dreams they had once considered unrealistic. Ordinary moments became the memories they treasured most because ordinary had once seemed impossible. Claire remained one of the closest people in their lives. When she announced her engagement to a kind elementary school teacher named Daniel, Noah laughed harder than anyone during the celebration dinner. "I suppose people will finally stop asking when we're getting married," Claire teased. "They're about 10 years too late," Noah replied. Even Ethan couldn't suppress his laughter. Some chapters deserved endings exactly like that. Later that evening, Ethan and Noah walked along the familiar river walk where an unnoticed photograph had once threatened to unravel everything they had built. The benches, bridges, and glowing skyline remained remarkably unchanged. Only they were different. They paused beneath the same stretch of lights where their hands had first brushed together. Noah turned toward him. "Do you ever think about the man you used to be?" Ethan considered the question carefully. "I think about him often." "Do you miss him?" He looked across the quiet water before answering. "I feel grateful for him." Noah tilted his head. "Grateful? He survived long enough for me to become who I am now." Emotion softened Noah's expression. Without hesitation, Ethan slipped a simple silver ring from his jacket pocket. Nothing extravagant. No dramatic audience. Just honesty. "I spent years believing love would cost me everything." He took Noah's hand. "Instead, it gave me my life back." Noah's eyes shimmered beneath the city lights. His answer came before Ethan finished smiling. Yes. Their embrace carried none of the fear that had once defined every meaningful moment between them. There were no rehearsed explanations waiting for tomorrow, No carefully edited stories prepared for curious strangers. No invisible walls separating truth from appearance. As they continued walking beneath the evening sky, Ethan realized the greatest promotion he had ever earned had nothing to do with titles, offices, or success. It was waking each morning without needing to become someone else before opening the front door. Because the love he had hidden to protect his career had ultimately taught him something far more important. The person worth fighting for had never been the job. It had always been the life he finally allowed himself to live.